Hello and welcome to Writer Rant, author advice in 5 minutes or less, because I have to get back to writing and so do you. So this week I'd like to talk a little bit about hard science fiction. There's kind of been a trend recently of authors using real science in situations that, traditional sci-fi would just kind of gloss over the details. So it's like, Star Wars, they don't really explain, how the light speed works, but, hard science fiction would say, well, we have a neutrino star and we condense it down and then we use it to tunnel through space-time or whatever. So kind of the explanations of the actual science and making it actually scientifically accurate, I get it. That's a great thing. If anything, it really kind of inspires people to like, oh wow, that's actual science? Great, I'm going to go learn about it in my spare time. But the problem with this is that so often I'm finding that these hard science fiction books are more just science textbooks with a little bit of fiction kind of sprinkled in. And so as a result, as a reader, I'm like, okay, I'm educated. I have a master's in mechanical engineering. I know plenty of science. And so, I get the science. I get, oh, hey, yeah, they are accurate in this. I've done enough research myself to make sure that my books are at least scientifically accurate. The problem is that when you spend so much time explaining all the science behind it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so boring. I get it. We want to have good science. We don't want to have people picking apart. It's like, well, that's not accurate. You can't really do that. But when it comes down to it, it's like, don't focus so much on it because the book still has to be entertaining. Like, people aren't going to read a science textbook just on their own. I mean, some people will, but those aren't your key audience when you're trying to write science fiction. It still has to be fiction to the point where it has to be entertaining. It has to be something that somebody would pick up and like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Regardless of the science, it's your characters, it's your story. And I think that's really why, so like The Martian, that's kind of the trend that started the hard science fiction kind of uptick in people who are like, oh, hey, yeah, no, I know science, I know science fiction, I can write it, I can make it accurate like Andy Weir did. And, I get it, but what The Martian does correctly is it has a very entertaining main character that you're following. If your main character isn't entertaining, if they're not interesting, then you're going to lose your reader so fast because, again, with so much hard science in there, it gets dry really fast. And so even though the facts are correct, even though the science is correct, it's kind of one of those situations that I referred to in a previous episode. It's like, is it necessary? Like, are those facts necessary for the reader to know? Or is it just you showing off as an author to say, hey, I did my research on my science, and so all these things are accurate, and this is how it would be, and this is how long it would take to travel across the universe because light speed is a limiting factor, and communications, and all that kind of stuff. And again, I get it, but again, you're writing. If you're writing these things, in a fictional context, it should still be entertaining, because otherwise you should just write nonfiction. You should say, hey, I'm going to write, here's kind of a conceptual idea of how to do, space travel with, this or that concept or whatever, and explore those. And that's great, but, maybe do it in a nonfiction context so people aren't disappointed and bored by your book just because you spend so much time in the hard science that it's just boring. So, what about you readers out there? Are you finding the hard science fiction to be kind of boring? And is there anything else that you find in today's books that kind of really annoys you, that you would want to rant about? By all means, drop a comment below and maybe I'll get to it in a future episode. So thanks for watching this week's Writer Rant. I'm Benjamin M. Weilert.